In this video, I'm going to tell you about an exciting new kind of model Congress. Every year, tens of thousands of American students participate in Model Congress conferences. These are fantastic affairs, and a great many good things are accomplished. But there's another way of conducting these conferences. There's a new kind of Model Congress conference, and it offers benefits too. And the benefits just might exceed those of the typical way of doing things. What's the difference between the typical conference and the new kind of conference? Well, with the typical conference, what's the well-established conferences, the emphasis is upon parliamentary maneuver, in particular how a bill is pushed through Congress. And this is very important knowledge for an American citizen to acquire. But learning about public policy, learning about the government in a bigger sense, learning about the problems the country faces and how it goes about tackling these problems, these substantial problems, that's incidental. Learning critical thinking technique, public speaking technique, there'll be some of that acquired, but not that much. But there is this other great thing that comes out of the typical Model Congress. What a boost to your confidence as a public speaker. Now, what about the new kind of conference? Well, in the new kind of conference, parliamentary maneuver is secondary. There's this big emphasis instead upon high-level public policy, on how the government tackles a big problem, in fact, a pressing problem. So there's this high level of civic engagement in the new kind of conference. Also, there's great emphasis upon critical thinking technique and upon public speaking technique. And speaking of public speaking, the increase in the confidence of the participant is even greater than in the typical Model Congress, as I will explain in a few minutes. Now let's look at some of the detail, what distinguishes the typical way from the new way. In the typical way, you hear about a conference coming up several weeks away, several months away, and you eagerly mark your calendar, and why not? This is going to be an exciting time. Well, you do know that when you get to that conference, you're going to be adhering to a very precise parliamentary protocol. It's what prevails in the American Congress. But beyond that, though, the affair is a wide open conference. It's free reign. You can come in with any legislation you want, any bill you want, on any issue, take any stand. Now, at first, this seems very exciting. The sky seems to be the limit. But before you know it, the sky is actually much, much closer to the ground. You're going to find out you don't have that public policy background. You're probably not going to aim very high. You'll do a bit of research. You know a bit more than when you started. You get to the conference. You've got a few minutes. I think it's 3 minutes typically. Typically it's 3 minutes to make your case. Your peers have probably not given any thought at all to your issue, to your particular piece of legislation, so they listen to you and they vote you up or down. And then you return the favor. They have a proposal. You listen to them. Again, you don't have much background to weigh what they have to say. And around it goes. But what comes out of this, though? You have had this opportunity, simulating that of a senator or a congressman, and it's heady stuff, to go from committee to committee, move around the caucuses, and then to address the entire Senate or the entire House, to address 50, 100 of your peers. And this is great stuff. And you can imagine, once you have spoken before this number of people, you can say to yourself, I've done it. I had something to say, and I pulled it off. Now, what about the new way of doing things? Well, with the new way, again, you anticipate the conference is off some weeks, some months away. But you notice, though, right away you notice some differences. The first difference is, in the new way of doing things, it's not free reign. You can't just bring in any bill or other on any issue. In fact, it's a single issue. It's a major burning issue the country faces right now. And you're going to discover that you're part of a team, that everybody in that conference is part of a team trying to solve this burning problem. And it's a high-level problem. So you solve this problem, you tackle this problem, you solve this problem, and you actually get you get insight into a lot of other problems. It's inevitable. So there's that big difference. Now, you're going to say to me, though, but wait a minute, you just said a moment before, I don't have any public policy background. How can I tackle this major public policy problem? That's why they're pre-conference briefings. They're not very lengthy, they're not very involved, but they're provided by top professionals to get you ready, develop momentum before you get to the conference. If you just participated in these briefings, you'll know enough to make a contribution and to enjoy yourself at the day of the conference. But typically, students do more. They're motivated. They want to bring their own spin to it. And they're certainly welcome to, because they can propose any solution, albeit focused on that issue, that they want. Now, something else happens in these pre-conference briefings. You're actually briefed. These are very realistic briefings. You're briefed the way a senator or a congressman is briefed. We're talking about the raw data, primary sources, not some hearsay or other, what the newspaper says. What really matters. And there's something more to it. You're given a wide range of options, of possible solutions. And in fact, in some ways, you may be given a better briefing than the senator or the congressman receives, because there are certain special interests haunting the halls of power that maybe restrict some of the solutions that members of Congress are told about. We don't have that problem, or anybody involved in this new Congress method of conducting a Congress doesn't have that problem. All range of solutions can be put on the table. You may even find some that your briefer hasn't even thought of. Imagine that. That could happen. So that's another difference. As you get to the conference, then you notice some other differences. You're noticing that you have more speaking time than in the typical conference. You're also noticing that you're much more engaged in this conference than the other. That is, when you speak your say, and if your bill is defeated in committee, you're not done. You're still part of this team effort that's trying to solve this difficult problem. You've just begun. And you may even discover that later in the conference, you bubble up again and become and achieve a prominent place. It happens. There's another difference too. You look around the participants. Yes, if this is a high school conference, you're among the numerous participants. If it's a college conference, you're a college student among the numerous participants. But you're noticing, though, that the people who run the committees are senior to you. They're going to be college students if it's a high school conference. And they're not just referees as in the typical conference. They're part of the government. They caucus with you. They speak on the floor. They have voting privileges. They strategize with you and against you sometimes. And then you notice something else. There are senior faculty in this government simulation. They participate in this too, alongside of you, alongside of those committee chairs. Now this opens up all kinds of possibilities. And this further promotes critical thinking and sharpens your speaking. You're going to be able to observe how these senior faculty conduct themselves. And these are top professionals, and they just might have experience or other actually in or related to Congress. You'll see how they operate, how they handle raw data, how they handle what the think tank analysts have to say about the raw data, how they handle competing solutions, how they change their mind as the conference rolls on, how they're taken by surprise. Now, something too about these senior faculty members, and to some degree the committee chairs, they're not there to steer you one way or the other. They're there to facilitate, to stir creativity, which, by the way, is a hallmark of the new way of doing things. Tremendous creativity. But these senior members are there to move you in a direction. Maybe something isn't being explored sufficiently, or maybe there's too much weight in one way and maybe it needs to be spread out. There are different things that they do to keep the pot boiling, to keep you thinking. And yes, at times they also may make their own feelings known. So all this is available to you at the new way, the new kind of conference. Now there's one more thing about these new ways of doing things, and that is the boost to your confidence. Yes, your confidence as a speaker is going to be heightened, just as it is in the typical Congress, but I suggest it's going to be even more greatly heightened than that. Just imagine, we talk about the youth finding their voice, you finding your voice. You find your voice in this model Congress or that model UN or some other speech and debate competition, and it does happen all the time, and that's why forensics, these speech and debate competitions, are wonderful things. But in a conference like this new type, just imagine, you're not just going to find a voice, you're going to find a substantial voice. You're going to be making yourself heard on some major issue the country faces right now, and adults, major leaders across the country are all trying to solve. You're part of it. You're part of this nationwide civic discourse. It's amazing stuff. And think about this. So think about the boost to your confidence as a speaker, and even think about this. It could be that your solution is the one that carries the day at the conference. It could just be that your solution is the very one the country needs to implement. So these are wonderful. The typical way of doing things and the new way of doing things. I think you should try a bit of both. Speaking though of trying the new way, where can you find it? Well, Statesman Debate Institute offers you this opportunity. And I think we're probably the only organization presently in the country that is providing this new way of conducting Model Congress conferences. I hope it'll catch on. I rather suspect it will. And we have some Model Congress conferences coming up all the time. So try this new way. Try the old. Maybe bring the new way back to your school. Maybe ask us to help you get it started at your school. Maybe make the new way a stepping stone to the well-established way. You know, you go into one of these new kinds of conferences and it stirs your thinking and you get this panoramic high-level view like a member of Congress really has. Just imagine how that can spill over in other well-established Model Congress conferences. You can become quite a force to be reckoned with. You come to one of these new conferences early in the year and then you reap the dividends in other Model Congress conferences as the year continues. In any event, I hope to see you down the road, whether in the Senate or the House.